What is going on? Welcome to Bruce Room, where we get into the nitty-gritty of the artists and creatives in the Australian scene. I am Root, aka the Culture Black Kid, and today we have Jerome Blazé. He is a producer, a songwriter, a instrumentalist of various genres. His sophomore album, Living Room, is out right now. Jerome, how are you doing? Like for real, for real. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm a bit tired. It's been a big year. I know saying I'm tired is such a boring,
Yeah, no.
but yeah, it's been a lot of like stuff to organize and just kind of one thing after the other. But I'm also weirdly stuff feels like it's kind of chilling out
Mhm.
in that like. I've gotten through the bulk of the year.
Yeah.
So it's starting to shift more towards like, I don't know, I'm feeling a little more celebratory that
Mhm.
I've gotten here.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm tired, but I'm also feeling satisfied.
For sure, for sure. And when you've taken on such a conceptual album as this is, and like all the moving parts, I'm sure that you're like at some point like, whew, whew,
Yeah,
there's
I
a
gotta do
lot going
that.
on.
Yeah, yeah, totally. Yeah, it's very much been like not only the album, but having the release cycle sort of reflect the
Yeah,
album as much as possible. Um, yeah, so it's been very involved.
for sure, for
Yeah.
sure. Well, speaking of the album, Living Room, sophomore project out right now. As I like to think when it comes to music, and a lot of people, there's always a best place and a best time to listen to something for the first time to really, encapsulate the project in it's in its entirety and hear it in the place that the artist, wants you to take it in. So, when and where do you think is the best place and time to listen to Living Room for the first time?
Mm. Either in the morning,
Mm,
I feel like it's a lot of very morning music, or in the evening, like golden hour when the sun's setting.
mm,
Um, that's when, and then where, like, I mean, if you can get a view of Sydney, if you're in Sydney, like if you can get a view of the skyline, and just reenact shots from the documentary and stuff, then I mean, that's peak. That would be peak. I
okay.
would be very impressed if someone went and did that for their first listening experience. There's actually a spot called Milk Beach,
Mm.
which has the craziest view of like the whole city. It's like
Yeah.
the just this huge vista.
Mhm.
So I'm actually thinking of going there on release day just to get in the vibe in the evening and just yeah take a deep breath.
For sure. For sure. Okay. Fair enough. Fair enough. And you might have started a challenge
Yeah, yeah,
um,
true.
so okay, dope. I'm gonna make sure I try and get around to that when I
Yeah,
can
yeah,
spit it.
yeah.
But yeah, to move on to another part, is how we've actually met. So we met the first time we met was online, technically.
Yeah, yeah.
I think I saw one of your tracks come across my Unearthed Triple J Unearthed timeline.
Mm.
And then from there, I think I also saw when you put out, oh, you're gonna have to remind me which song it was specifically, but it sampled Zion.
Oh
Um,
yeah, let your heart fill up.
yep. And I was like, oh, fire, fire, fire,
Mm.
fire. And then on top of that, seeing just the concept of the album and all the
Yeah,
instrumentalists. And I think it was even from when I first played um, one of your songs, the one with Sarah Levins
yeah,
on
yeah. Is this what
violin.
I miss?
And I was like, oh shoot, okay, okay,
Yeah,
because
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
such a big fan of arrangement and
Mm.
things that are just out of the norm when it comes to
Totally.
production. So
Yeah,
I was immediately drawn in.
yeah. Cool. I'm glad you think so. I feel like I'm always um for better or for worse, I'm always trying to, whenever there's something recognizable, I always try and contrast that with something to sort of throw you off the trail a little bit.
Sure.
Yeah, yeah,
And then when we first met in person, was at a Menashe gig a couple months
yeah,
ago. And yeah, it was super chill. We just chopped it up a little, just a little
yeah,
bit, and
yeah, yeah,
now we're here.
yeah.
But anyway, let's keep moving. I got one final intro question before we get into it, which I always like to ask, which is what percentage of yourself do you think your inner circle really knows about you?
Like 80%. I feel like I am actually quite similar around people. At least once I'm comfortable, like I'm pretty similar
Mhm.
to most people. I don't know. Hard to actually
Age.
say
Fair
because
enough.
I'm me. But yeah, I feel like I like to say 80%.
Okay.
But that might be complete. I don't know. You'd have to you'd have to ask someone in my inner circle.
That's fair enough. That's fair
They
enough.
might have a completely different take.
True, 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 true. Okay, but
Yeah.
let's stick with 80% for now.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
how much of that 80% do you think you've shared in your music so far?
Well, I guess if I'm trying to be genuine, there's always an element of like curation when you're making your own music and you're bringing to light the things that you want and maybe not saying the things that you don't want to say. But at the same time, I guess I'm trying to be my best self in my music. Um, so how much that consists of in like a percentage sense, whether that's genuine or not. But I guess I'm trying to be a genuine representation of, um, yeah, my best self, um, which also means that there's all the imperfections that come along with that, and trying not to. I'm trying to get better and not masking those imperfections or trying to like clean things up too much.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Right. Fair enough. Fair enough. If you could tack a number onto it though, just to throw a random number out there, what do you think?
um, I don't know, probably 80% as well. I
Yeah,
don't know. I feel
yeah,
like it's that 80%. Yeah, it's the you're probably part of the inner circle if you listen to the tracks.
sure. Fair enough. Fair enough. All right. Well, hopefully through this main part, we can get to know a little bit more of those, either of those 80%.
Yeah.
So what I have asked Jerome to do is do a little bit of homework. We're going to take it back to primary school days, do a little bit of
Yeah.
a show and tell.
Yeah.
Like I said, I've asked Jerome to gather some items. And if we don't have an item, then that's all right. Hopefully we at least get a dope story to go
Mm.
along with it. So let's get into it. And my first question for you is, what is something that represents who you are as a person?
Yeah, so I was just kind of like, when I read that, I just sort of looked around my room and I was just like, sort of scanning for things. Because it's a big
Yeah.
ask, really, like one item to represent your entire
Yeah.
self. But I think this is at least some of it. It's this book
Okay.
um,
I've seen that before.
by, try and get that reflection out, by Sean Tan,
Hmm.
who's like a famous Australian children's author,
Hmm.
and he's an immigrant. I'm not sure where was originally from,
Hmm.
but he sort of writes about. He doesn't write. It's some of his stuff has like text in it, but this book particularly is just images
Hmm.
or like illustrations. And I sort of stumbled on it. I used to love it as a kid, and I sort of stumbled on it recently again, and was just like, I just felt this. Obviously, it was like a sense of nostalgia, but also this kind
Yeah.
of current connection to it. Like I could still relate to a lot of the stories that is told in this book, and there's a lot of stuff about kind of otherness and like going somewhere that's not your home, which I know many people have experienced, even if you're not an immigrant. Yeah, and yeah, there's this page in particular.
Hmm.
Um, and we ended up actually taking a lot of inspiration, or for some of the album artwork stuff, we took some cues from this book particularly, just as a homage to that. And there's also a track that mentions it specifically,
Mhm.
and it's kind of about that. So yeah, I thought that book was just a nice kind of connection from the past to the present, and felt kind of poignant.
Sure, for sure. And I don't know, I feel like that's been kind of a theme recently in regards to, or at least in the people that I interact with, where it's like they find something from their childhood or
Mm,
from their past that's like that reminds them of the simplicity of
mm,
life, or like reminds them of a simpler time, or
mm,
a time when they were a bit more free or joyous or something along those
for
lines, or
sure.
even a story
Yeah,
like you
yeah,
mentioned.
yeah,
And uh, yeah, that's really really cool. Do
yeah.
you
It's that
remember?
whole inner child thing, like it's
Sure,
the artist's way, reconnecting with the inner child. It's those formative things are never, they're always gonna feel really special.
for sure, for
Yeah.
sure. Do you remember when you were a child the first time, or seeing it, or reading it, looking at it,
I don't know if this was the first Sean Tan book that I got, because he's got a bunch of books.
True, true,
But yeah, no, I can't say I remember specifically. I just remember it being around, and
right.
like I would like read it over and over again, and like um, yeah, it was definitely something that I kind of looked at
Mhm.
over and over the years. So yeah.
For sure, for sure. And finally, speaking of authors, is there any other authors um, or books specifically that has resonated with you recently that maybe could lead towards, inspiration for the album, or just something that's resonated with your life in general right now?
Yeah, I'm not a huge reader,
Mhm.
but I do. Um, yeah, I do kind of dip in and out of stuff. I've been reading How Music Works by David Byrne recently,
Mhm. Mhm.
of Talking Heads fame, and he's just like just insanely smart. Like, just the way he writes is so clear, and so insightful.
Mhm.
Um, I read the whole thing a few years ago, but I'm just rereading it because I kind of forgotten quite a lot of it. And then obviously this is such a classic answer, but I did pick up The Artist's Way,
Mhm.
which is a classic. I think Julia Cameron is the author. Classic like book, sort of like a self-therapy book almost. It's not like self-helpy.
Yeah.
It's more like it's like a 12-week course,
Mhm.
which I never got through. Which I think no one, I don't know. I'd I'd love to see the percentage of people that actually make it through, but even just starting doing the morning pages for a few months, and going on the artist dates, so that these are like things that you do as part of reading the book.
Mhm.
um, I did that a few years ago, and I was sort of in the process of making the album, and it did help me think
Mhm.
differently just about creativity in general. And even though I kind of dropped off it definitely made a lasting impact for
Mhm.
sure.
For sure, for sure. No, that makes sense. That makes sense. Okay, let's keep moving. Number two, what is your favorite sentimental gift that you have received from someone?
Yeah, so again, I saw this question, I cast my eye around the room, and I have this, which is a framed. I've made these little like rhythm logo things for my debut album,
Mm.
not for this upcoming one. And my partner Sarah framed this, and the frame is also made by a friend who does really beautiful woodwork,
Yeah.
Jack Stannard. Um, and yeah, she framed this when my album came out and gave it to me. And yeah, I don't actually own that much sentimental stuff, or at least not that I can remember. Um, but yeah, that's definitely very sentimental to me.
Sure, for sure.
Yeah.
How do you feel the journey of creating your debut album has been similar or different to comparison to completing this one, aside from the literal living room aspect
Yeah,
of it.
yeah. Well, funnily enough, I did, in terms of similarities, I was using the living room for Giver. More towards it wasn't like the whole process, more
Mm.
towards the end process. But yeah, a lot of Giver I also made out of Sydney, where I grew up in the Southern Highlands.
Mm.
Um, and that sort of sunk into the music a lot, and it has much more of like a natural kind of rural world to it, and is more folky in influence and like Bon Ivory,
Yeah.
and yeah, I definitely like this new album is kind of flips that on its head and feels a lot more city and a lot more urban and a lot more like in the CBD,
Right.
and that's also reflected by the influences that I'm pulling on, which are much more soul driven and groove driven, which has always been a part of my sort of musical DNA, but I just wasn't referencing it as much in
Yeah,
the previous work.
for sure.
So yeah, definitely where both albums were made has differed quite a lot. Apart
Yeah,
from the kind of linking living room bit in the middle. Yeah.
100%. No, that makes sense. That makes sense. All right, let's keep moving. Number three. What is the first album that you ever bought or received?
Yeah, I was trying to think of this. It's probably, I can't remember specifically, but it's probably like a Black Eyed Peas
Ah,
album, probably
classic.
like Monkey Business or something, or Ella Funk. Is that what that album was called? The blue one?
Yeah, I think that was yeah, well, was it Elephant? I think that was Elephant.
There was definitely something elephant related.
Yeah, I think that one was Elephant.
Yeah. I think yeah, the Black Eyed Peas were one of the first like active sort of
Hmm.
artists that I really got into.
For sure.
Those Black Eyed Peas are still sick. They're still going off. Um,
100%.
yeah.
Is there a song from either of those albums, and like again to bring it back, a time when you first heard either one of those albums and you're like, oh my goodness, this is the time.
Man, like we're really talking. Like I don't know how much it's influenced my current stuff, but like, um, yeah, probably like heard Pump It and was like, this is fire. And I stand by that. It's fire.
100%.
Yeah. But yeah, I don't know how much that's trickled down. I definitely like think the like sort of, especially in like really early Black Eyed Peas, which I probably only got into after the fact. That like soul influence
Yeah.
obviously is quite strong, and
Mhm.
maybe that's I'm sure that has actually played a part in shaping the music that I like and
Yeah.
therefore that I make. But yeah,
Fair enough.
pump it.
No, yeah, Papa Goes Hard. I used to play in a cover band, and
Yes.
I played trumpet, but
Oh, nice.
um then I also had to rap at the same time. So
Hell yeah.
I do a verse and then I da 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 with the other
Yeah,
hand,
yeah, yeah,
and then I
yeah.
go straight
So
back to the
good.
verse,
Oh,
and it
that sounds fire. I would love to see that.
was a whole thing. But I loved it.
Yeah,
It was so fun. It was.
yeah.
I was so tired afterward. I'm like, okay,
Yeah, that's a
don't give me a
workout.
trumpet song in like
Yeah,
4 songs.
please. Yeah. That's so good.
Oh, but nah. So no, I definitely hold a special place for Pump It in my
Yeah,
heart as
totally.
well.
I think many of us do.
Definitely, definitely.
Yeah.
And finally, is there a local artist whose song or project have you been rinsing lately?
Mm. Um, Let me think about this. I mean, like Zion jumps to mind.
Mhm.
Like, just that EP is so good. Like,
It's ridiculous.
he's yeah, such a great producer, such a great rapper, such a great writer.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, there's this a friend called Hinano Fujisaki,
Mm.
who actually played one of the Golden Hour and the CBD gigs. we went to uni together, and she's an incredible saxophonist. Um, and she released a project. I can't remember if it was this year or or late last year. But yeah, it's just so beautiful. It's kind of jazz, but it's not like you could. It's recorded in like the way that you would record a jazz album, but it's really much more like ambient and sort of folky almost, but has a really great sense of groove to it as well. Um, yeah, yeah, I think probably something that people haven't heard that as much, but definitely worth checking out. It's a beautiful record. Yeah,
Okay. Okay.
yeah,
Right. I'm gonna have to give it a spin.
yeah,
Sure.
yeah, yeah.
All right, let's keep it moving. Number four. What is a moment from one of your favorite gigs and sessions?
Gigs, I'd have to say when I played Phoenix last year, which has obviously kind of become a bit of a cornerstone of a budding Sydney artist's career.
It's
I
like
was
the
really
Madison Square Garden of like
totally, yeah,
the but
yeah,
like a niche
yeah,
anyway, keep
yeah,
going.
yeah. The niche Madison Square Garden, yeah, of Sydney. I love that. Yeah, um, yeah, and to be honest, the first so you do like two sets at
Mhm.
Phoenix, and the first set that I did was I was quite nervous, and I wasn't super. I didn't feel like I was super present. I got to be more present towards the end of the set, but I think doing the back-to-back sets, sometimes I've done that and it's been really tiring.
Mhm.
But for this, the second set that I did, I was just like really hyped, and like I just remember like as we were playing in that second set, just feeling like really in it. And often when I'm playing, I have to sort of coax myself out from
Mhm.
like thinking about everything else that's going on. But I just remember like really consciously enjoying what we were playing,
Mhm.
and that yeah, that feeling really stuck with me. So yeah, that's the live one, and then for sessions, I had to think. I mean, in all honesty, I have a lot of fun by myself,
Fair enough.
putting stuff together. But I mean, this album has been like insanely collaborative on the other side of the coin. So it's a lot of yeah, like gathering all the materials and then like meshing them together. But in terms of sessions like with other people, I made a track with Friday,
Mm.
called Radiohead.
Yeah.
And that just I think we were probably both going into that with uh, not too many like built up expectations, and those sessions tend to often feel the best. And yeah, the track just came together like very easily in like a couple of hours.
Sure.
Um, and then the other one I thought of was the first time I met Nick Ward and Chris Lanzon. Um, we'd all been put together, like introduced by a mutual friend, and we just like we made a track, and we made like this sort of like two-steppy garagey electronic thing, and we just were all playing like different synths at the same time over a drum loop. And the track, it ended up being the last track on Nick's um, last EP.
Mhm.
And it's just like it was just kind of a bunch of live takes all done at once. And again, just like low expectations, and it just came out super easily.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I really enjoyed that session.
No, for sure. For sure.
Yeah,
Nah, like I mean, two of probably the best artists in the scene right now as
yeah,
well. And um, yeah, I'm sure both those sessions would have just been so fun and
yeah.
so collaborative. So just the ideas just flying left and right.
Totally, totally. Yeah.
Like,
There's
and
no. not too much of a filter, you know, like
Definitely not. Definitely not. And that's what can make up some of the best sessions and even the most creative ones.
mm,
Which is like, all right, let's just it's like a jam almost. Let's just
yeah, totally, totally.
let's see what comes out and um yeah, absolutely both amazing
Yeah.
both amazing pieces of art as well. And then to bring it back to the Phoenix show, yeah, I get what you mean with the back to back sometimes. It's
Mm,
like well, I mean, once you finish a set, you're like, okay, cool, it's done. But no,
yeah,
you have one off the back, like straight, or not straight away, but like in another
yeah.
hour or so, it's like, oh, okay, gotta reset, gotta get
Yeah,
back
yeah,
into
it's a
it.
little kind of whiplashy. It's so, you know, so many ups and downs in a short period of time. But
Sure,
yeah.
sure. But yeah, like going through the motions to start, but like slowly being like, oh, wait, no, let me be present. Let me,
Mm,
be like, yo, I'm doing Phoenix right now, and
yeah.
that's cool. That's super cool.
Yeah. Yeah, there's been a few times at gigs where I just feel like I've kind of caught an edge
Mm.
and managed to like hold on to that edge and managed to yeah, just like have fun, play like real or like really have fun. Like I always have fun, but um yeah, sometimes you catch an edge and you feel really really present and like oh, there's just this like great music happening around me and I'm part of it.
Definitely.
Um yeah.
All right, fire, fire. All right. Move on to question number five, which is what is something that represents your dreams and aspirations within your field?
Yeah, yeah. So once again, I looked around my room and I saw this,
Mhm.
um, which is an album called Shore by Fleet Foxes.
Mhm.
Um, they're American, like I guess like folk band, chamber folk maybe. But yeah, it's their most recent album, which I think is probably lesser known, but weirdly where I found out about them and where I started to get into them. Um, and yeah, I just think that album is just incredible, like on so many levels, like songwriting, obviously, but also the performance, like the vocal performance and like the performance of all the other instruments as well, and it's so grand as well, like there's so many layers, but they fit together in such a beautiful way. And it manages to feel uncluttered as well as also feeling like expansive and super detailed. And it's also just a very like it's a very comforting album or a very sort of I know Robin Pecknold talks about like wanting to channel the warmth of like Brazilian music
Mhm.
in it, and there's actually a one Brazilian artist featured on it. Um, but yeah, it's like a big embrace, and it's just like you could tell it's just like they just love music, you know, and it's sort of a celebration of that almost.
For sure.
So yeah, if I could ever make a record with that sort of that level of expansiveness and that level of skill and knowledge in your sort of craft, like yeah, definitely aspire to make a record like Sure.
Definitely. Definitely.
Yeah.
If we're, taking Shaw in, as what you just explained, what do you think is like one of those things within your own artistry that you're like, okay, I'd love to get this to like another level to bring it closer to your wish of wanting to make an album or a project like that?
Mm, yeah. Well, this is slightly contradictory, but something I've been thinking about a lot recently is like minimalism in music.
Mhm.
Um, and Sure is a very maximal album in a way, but I think is also quite focused in a lot of other ways. And I've been listening to a lot of, I mean, Salt has been a huge influence in the production of Inflow on my album. And I think he finds minimalism in his music in a really like striking, beautiful way. Um, and I think it's so easy to layer and layer with like electronic music production or making music just in the modern age.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, I think I on a few tracks on living room, I managed to find that maybe in small moments, that sense of space. And yeah, I'm keen to just keep doubling down on that because yeah, I love music where there's just a few elements, but all of those elements really count, and they all come together to express something greater than the individual parts.
Sure.
So yeah, yeah, finding more minimalism in music.
Okay.
Yeah.
Stays. I'll make sure I keep an ear out for that
Yeah.
in the future, the future project.
Yeah. My next album will just be like a single kick drum.
Tell
It's
me why. Oh,
gone
that'd be
so
great.
minimal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, but it's just all tuned, just tuned kick drums.
Yeah, just tune kick drums. Yeah, that's all you need.
Oh my goodness.
Uh,
Oh, but anyway, speaking of creating something that's super interesting, before we get into our final question, um, it's time to play a game because I love to play a game in this specific game. So, what I am going to get you to do is build your ultimate collab track.
yep.
It's going to be yourself, three other artists, one producer, and one videographer slash director, and it's all local artists.
Okay, I gotta say Zion.
Mhm.
Um, there's a guy called Jacques Emery who's an incredible upright bassist.
Mhm.
And he does like all this amazing stuff. Like he does so much cool stuff.
Mhm.
Um, and like really experimental ways of playing the upright bass,
Mhm.
amongst many other things.
Yeah.
So yeah, Jacques plus Zion would be crazy. Um, and then maybe Hinano as well. Like Hinano's way of playing is just so beautiful. Like, and I think all those like sort of disparate elements coming together on one track would be really interesting.
Okay.
Um, Producer wise, why not like Genesis Owusu or something?
Okay. Fair
Yeah,
enough.
yeah. I mean, the goat, obviously, that'd be sick.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Um,
And then,
yeah.
yeah, director. Um, I can't remember. I think his name is Wim Wenders.
Mhm.
The guy who um, directed Paris, Texas, and Perfect Days, which is a new movie that came out.
Mhm.
Um, oh wait, they've got to be local.
Yeah.
Local director. Okay, so not him.
Ignore that.
Man, I don't. To be honest, I don't really know many local directors. So like James Tobotton, who's done all of the stuff for um, for this album, has absolutely killed it. And yeah, I'd love to keep working with him. So probably James.
Okay, bet. Bet. So to run through it one more time, we got yourself producing the track.
Yeah,
It was Genesis Owusu, Zion Garcia, with you said Emery,
Jacques Emery. Yeah,
Doc Emery,
and then Hanano Fujisaki,
and yep, and then James.
James Tobotton.
James Button on the videography
Yeah,
slash direction.
yeah.
Okay. Um, what do you think would be happening in said video for this track?
I don't know. Probably just like I think with that many cooks in the kitchen, something really simple, just like us jamming out. Perhaps in the living room. Maybe it's the follow up.
Ooh,
But I think I love videos where the performance is the main aspect, and um, yeah, there's not too much going on, or you get some interesting um, angles cinematography wise, but like yeah, it's really just to elevate the music.
mhm.
So yeah.
Okay. Okay. Bet. Well, let's see if that ever turns out.
Yeah, that'd be crazy, man.
All right, we got one more question before we get out of here. So what is a personal moment that stands out to you that has impacted your music in a certain way?
Um, I mean, like definitely just moving to Sydney.
Hmm.
Like, um, I moved when I was 18, like straight out of high school, um, to study, and like, yeah, that was like a huge thing for me. I know, like everyone does it, but like, yeah, it really sort of, having grown up in the country, it really opened up my world. And especially studying music, like being connected to a whole bunch of other amazing musicians all in the one building was like, yeah, really inspiring, and yeah, has had a very direct impact on my music. Like a lot of those people are still my friends to this date, and play on the songs and play in my band. So yeah, moving to Sydney has been a huge thing.
No, for sure, for sure. And sure, it can be a cliche way to look at it, but still, how your journey was with moving to Sydney is different from someone else's journey who moved to Sydney. It's different from someone who moved out of Sydney or,
Right.
moved anywhere else in the world. So, whilst you said, it can be a simple answer, I get what you mean. And
Yeah,
no single person's experience is exactly the same.
totally. Yeah, totally.
But yeah, well, I think that's a perfect place to to wrap up here. Jerome, thank you so much for jumping on, giving us a little bit of insight to yourself, and the project as well. Um, and here is where I like to roll out the red carpet, let everyone know what is up, what's out, what they can maybe stay tuned for, and yeah, all that good stuff.
Yeah, so I mean, as I said earlier, it's been a year-long experience, this album, not just the music. And obviously now the album's out, and to celebrate, we're putting on a headline show on November 28th at the Lansdowne. It's my biggest headline show to date, and yeah, I'm going to be pulling out all the stops for bring the full band, but also a string quartet, um, and a heap of special guests as well. So, going to be playing the album in full, and yeah, that's the final event of the year. So it's a big one.
Amazing, amazing. Make sure you stay tuned for that. And yeah, once again, Jerome, thank you so much for jumping on. Of
Thanks for having me.
course, of course. I am Ru, aka the Culture Black Kid, Jerome Blazé. Catch you next time. Peace.